She doesn't need to know how much it's worth. She wouldn't know what to do with it anyway. That's what my father said about me, his own daughter, 3 hours after my husband's casket went into the ground. I was still wearing my black dress, still had cemetery dirt on my shoes. And when I walked up to the front door of my parents' house that evening, I heard every word through the screen door. Their plan, the forged papers. The doctor, who'd never once examined me, signing off on my sanity like it was a golf scorecard. But they didn't know I was listening, and they certainly didn't know what I'd do next. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe. But only if you genuinely connect with this story. Drop your location and what time it is where you are. I love knowing who's listening. My name is Patricia Sinclair. I'm 34 years old, and this is what happens when the people who are supposed to protect you become the ones you need protection from. Now let me take you back to a Tuesday morning in October, the day I buried my husband. It rained the morning of Daniel's funeral, not a downpour, just a thin, stubborn drizzle that clung to everything, the kind of rain that doesn't let you forget it's there. The church was small, white clapboard, scuffed pews, a crooked steeple on the edge of Braintree. Daniel would have liked it. He never wanted anything loud. About 40 people came. His co-workers from the software firm, our neighbors on Elm Terrace, a few college friends who'd driven down from New Hampshire. Helen Marsh, my best friend since 9th grade, sat beside me in the front row and held my hand so tight her knuckles turned white. I kept looking at the back of the church. 3 seats on the left, the ones I'd mentally reserved for my parents and my sister Megan, stayed empty. No coats draped over them, no purses tucked beneath. I checked my phone under the hymnal. No missed calls, no texts, nothing. Helen leaned over. "Do you want me to call them?" I shook my head. "They know what day it is." The pastor said kind things about Daniel. 38 years old, software engineer, quiet, steady, the kind of man who fixed your porch light without being asked. A heart condition nobody caught until it was too late. 2 weeks from his first chest pain to a pine box. We'd been married 8 years. He handled the bills, the taxes, the insurance. I handled everything else. The groceries, the appointments, the night terrors when his chest ached at 3 a.m. He used to say, "Patty, I've got the numbers. You've got me." And that was enough. That was the whole deal. After the burial, I stood by the grave in the rain. 40 people had come to say goodbye to my husband. None of them shared my last name before I got married. I didn't know yet why my family wasn't there. I told myself they were busy. I even felt guilty for not reminding them. I had no idea they were home, busy with something else entirely. The call came the next morning. I was still on the couch in yesterday's clothes when the phone rang, a 617 number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Sinclair? This is Daniel Kessler. I was your husband's estate attorney." Estate attorney. I didn't even know Daniel had one. "I'd like to meet with you today if possible. There are documents that require your attention." I drove to a brownstone office near Copley Square. Brass nameplate. Tall windows. The kind of place Daniel would have walked past without blinking because he never cared about appearances. Kessler was in his early 50s, gray at the temples, reading glasses on a chain. He offered me water and got straight to it. "Your husband executed a will 18 months ago. He named you sole beneficiary." He opened a folder and slid 3 property summaries across the desk. 3 rental apartments in the greater Boston area, Dorchester, Somerville, Cambridge, combined market value, approximately $2.4 million, and 1 residential property on the shore in Cape Cod, valued at roughly $1.5 million. I read the numbers twice, then a third time. Daniel owned all of these? Free and clear, no mortgages. The rental units generate steady income. Everything transfers to you. I sat there, mouth open, trying to reconcile the man who drove a 10-year-old Subaru with the man who apparently owned nearly $4 million in real estate. Kessler studied me for a moment. Then he pulled a business card from his breast pocket and placed it on top of the folder. "Mrs. Sinclair, your husband prepared very carefully. He wanted you to be safe. He paused. If anyone at all, pressures you about these assets, call me before you sign a single thing. It was a strange thing to say. I thanked him and slipped the card into my coat pocket. I left that office feeling like Daniel was still protecting me from somewhere I couldn't see. But I didn't understand yet why Kessler had been so careful with his warning. I wouldn't understand until that same evening. I drove to my parents' house in Quincy that evening, still in the same black coat, eyes still raw. I wanted to tell them about the will. I wanted to sit at the kitchen table where I grew up and hear my mother say something soft. Something like, "It's going to be okay, sweetheart." The porch light was on. I parked behind my father's truck and walked up the front steps. The screen door was latched, but the inner door was cracked open, the way my mother always left it when the house got warm from cooking. I reached for the handle. Then I heard my name. "Patricia doesn't need to know the details yet." My father's voice. Low and firm, the way he sounds when he's running a conversation he doesn't want interrupted. I stopped. My hand hovered an inch from the screen. "Kessler called me this afternoon." That was my father again. The son-in-law left her apartments, 3 of them, and a house on the Cape. Silence. Then Megan's voice. Sharp. Quick. "How much?" "Close to 4 million. A longer silence. I could hear the mantel clock ticking through the door. Then Megan. "She can't keep that money. She doesn't even know how to pay an electric bill." My father grunted. The kind of grunt that means agreement. I stood there on the porch, one hand still raised. The drizzle had stopped hours ago, but I was shaking like it hadn't. Inside that house were the only 3 people left in my family, and they were sitting around a table discussing my life like I was a line item on a spreadsheet. But the next sentence, the one from my mother, that was the one that changed everything. My mother's voice came through the screen door like a blade wrapped in silk. "Daniel dying is the best thing that's happened to this family. Now we finally have a way out." I want you to sit with that sentence the way I had to. My husband, the man who brought my mother flowers on her birthday, who fixed my father's guttering every spring without being asked, had been dead for 16 days, and my mother called it the best thing. My knees almost buckled, but I stayed upright. I stayed quiet. My father picked up right where she left off. "I talked to Feldman today. He'll sign a certificate. Grief disorder, psychological trauma, inability to manage financial decisions. We file for guardianship." Megan goes on as the appointed guardian. "I already called a real estate agent in Barnstable about the Cape House." That was Megan. Casual, like she was ordering takeout. My mother again. "Make sure you hide the paperwork. Patricia sees any of it and the whole thing falls apart." I stood on that porch for another minute. Maybe 2. My ears were ringing. My chest felt like someone had poured concrete into it. Then I did something I didn't plan. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice recorder, and pressed the red button. I held the phone near the crack in the door and let it listen. They kept talking. Details. Timelines. Who to call. How to keep me in the dark. After 2 more minutes, I pressed stop. I turned around, walked down the steps, got in my car, and drove away. I didn't knock. I didn't go inside. I didn't cry. I drove 30 minutes in total silence. No music. No tears. Just one question on a loop. How long had they been looking at me and seeing a wallet instead of a person? I sat at the kitchen table in the apartment Daniel and I had shared for 8 years. His coffee mug was still in the drying rack. The business card from Kessler sat in front of me, next to my phone with the recording on it. I called Helen at 11 at night. She picked up on the second ring. She always does when it's me. "Patty, what happened?" I told her. All of it. The empty seats at the funeral, Kessler's office, the porch, every sentence I'd heard through the screen door. Helen didn't interrupt. She didn't gasp or curse. She just listened. That's what makes Helen dangerous. She listens the way lawyers do, catching every thread. When I finished, her voice was steel. "Patty, listen to me. Do not call your parents. Do not call Megan. First thing tomorrow, call Kessler." Then call me. I know what to do. Helen is a paralegal at a real estate and estate law firm in downtown Boston. She's spent 11 years around probate cases, guardianship filings, property disputes. She recognized what my family was doing before I even had the vocabulary for it. What they're describing, using a doctor to certify you as incapacitated without examining you, then filing for guardianship to control your assets. That's not a family disagreement, Patty. That's a felony. Forgery. Fraud. We treat it like one. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. There's someone at the Norfolk County DA's office I've worked with, she continued. A detective. Specializes in financial fraud against vulnerable adults. His name is Ray Campos. If we need him, and I think we will, I can make the call. I stared at Daniel's coffee mug across the table. He used to say I was stronger than I thought. I didn't believe him then, but I was starting to. My mother called the next morning at 9:15. Her voice was warm, rehearsed, perfectly pitched. Sweetie, I've been thinking about you all night. Why didn't you come by yesterday? We waited for you. They waited for me. I almost laughed. I was exhausted, Mom. Maybe another time. How about Sunday dinner? The whole family. Megan wants to see you. Your father has been worried sick. Worried. Sick. I kept my voice even. Helen had coached me. Act normal, don't tip them off. Buy time. Sure, Mom. Sunday works. Good. We love you, sweetheart. You shouldn't be going through this alone. I hung up and immediately dialed Kessler. He answered on the first ring, as if he'd been expecting this. Mr. Kessler, my father contacted you yesterday about my husband's estate. What exactly did he ask? A pause. He asked about the total value. He asked whether you were the sole beneficiary. And he asked, hypothetically, what would happen if you were declared legally incapacitated? My stomach dropped. Mrs. Sinclair, I told him nothing beyond what's public record. But his questions concerned me. That's why I gave you my card. Daniel's attorney had seen it coming before I did. Kessler's voice sharpened. If your father files for guardianship and you don't respond in time, a judge could grant a temporary order in as few as 14 days. You need to get ahead of this. I'm filing a preemptive objection today. Then he gave me one more name, Dr. Rebecca Winters. A board-certified psychiatrist. Independent. 20 years of practice. Schedule an evaluation with her this week. If we have a legitimate psychiatric report confirming your full capacity, any filing based on a fraudulent certificate collapses on contact. I wrote down the number and called before lunch. The first appointment was set for Thursday. But I didn't know yet that Megan had already made her own calls, and she wasn't waiting for the court either. Thursday afternoon, Dr. Rebecca Winters' office was in a converted Victorian near Brookline Village, plants on the windowsill. No receptionist. She opened the door herself. The evaluation lasted 90 minutes. She asked about Daniel, about my daily routines, about whether I was sleeping, eating, leaving the house. She asked about my childhood, about my parents. I told the truth, all of it, and she wrote steadily without reacting. At the end, she set her pen down and looked at me across the desk. Mrs. Sinclair, you are grieving. That is human. It is not a disability. There is no indication, none, of diminished cognitive function or inability to manage your affairs. She signed the report, stamped it, handed me the original in a sealed envelope. Keep this somewhere safe. I drove home feeling like I could breathe for the first time in a week. A licensed psychiatrist, with 2 decades of practice, had just confirmed in writing what Daniel always told me. I was capable. I was sound. I was enough. What I didn't know, what Helen found out that same evening through a contact at Feldman's clinic, was that my father had visited Dr. Nathan Feldman that very afternoon. Same day, same city, different result entirely. Feldman, a family physician, not a psychiatrist, had signed a certificate declaring Patricia Harper Sinclair exhibiting severe grief disorder with marked inability to manage personal and financial affairs. He'd never met me, never scheduled an appointment with me, never once looked me in the eye. And here's the part that would matter most later. On Feldman's certificate, the line marked Date of Patient Examination was left completely blank. Because there was no examination, there was only a signature and a favor between golf partners. Sunday evening, I stood on the same porch where I'd overheard everything 5 days earlier. This time, I knocked. My father opened the door with a smile I'd never seen before. Too wide, too warm. He pulled out my chair at the dinner table. He poured my water. Gerald Harper had never poured anyone's water in 62 years. My mother had cooked chicken piccata, my favorite from when I was 12. The house smelled like lemon and butter. Megan hugged me in the hallway. Her perfume was expensive. Her credit card debt was more expensive. We sat. We ate. My father steered the conversation like a man parallel parking, careful, deliberate, checking every angle. So, sweetheart, have you had a chance to sort through Daniel's things? Do you know what he left behind? I chewed slowly. The lawyer is still handling it. I don't really understand most of it yet. A look passed between my parents. Quick, almost invisible. But I caught it. Gerald leaned forward. Finances are complicated, sweetheart. Let your dad handle the lawyer stuff. You've got enough on your plate. Donna nodded. He's right, honey. You need to focus on healing. Megan said nothing. She stared at her phone. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself to use the bathroom. On the way back, I passed my father's home office. The door was ajar. On his desk, half hidden under a newspaper, sat a manila envelope stamped with the Norfolk County Court logo. I pulled out my phone and took a photo. 2 seconds. Then I walked back to the table and finished my chicken. Sitting at that table, watching 3 people I've known my whole life perform the role of a loving family, I kept thinking, how many dinners before this one were also a show? How many times did I sit in this exact chair and miss every cue? Have you ever looked back at a moment with your family and realized nothing was what you thought it was? I'd love to know. Share it in the comments. I don't think I'm the only one. I drove home and opened the photo. The envelope's return address, Norfolk Probate and Family Court. The stamp across the front, in RE, petition for guardianship. They'd already filed. Monday morning. I called Kessler before the coffee finished brewing. They've filed, I said. I saw the envelope last night. Norfolk Probate Court. He was quiet for 3 seconds. I heard keys clicking. I'm looking at it now. Gerald Harper, petitioner. Megan Harper, proposed guardian. Attached exhibit. A medical certificate signed by Dr. Nathan Feldman, stating you lack the mental capacity to manage your person and estate. Hearing it stated that way, in legal language, typed into a court system, assigned a case number, made it real in a way the porch conversation hadn't. This was no longer family talk. This was a court filing. The preliminary hearing is set for 14 days from the filing date, Kessler continued. That gives us until October 29th. If we don't respond before then, a judge could issue a temporary guardianship order. Megan would have legal authority over your finances within the hour. 14 days. That's all that stood between me and losing control of everything Daniel had built. I'm filing our objection this morning, Kessler said. Dr. Winter's report goes in as the primary exhibit. That alone should give the judge pause. I called Helen next. Good, she said. Kessler handles the court side. But there's a criminal side too, and that's where Campos comes in. I talked to him yesterday. He wants to hear the recording, and he wants Feldman's certificate. How do we get it? It was filed with the court. Campos can request a certified copy through official channels. He said he'll have it within a week. A week. The clock was already ticking on 14 days, and we needed 7 of them just to confirm what I already knew. That Feldman had signed a document about a patient he'd never seen. 14 days. I could feel every one of them. The call came on Wednesday, day 3 of the 14. A woman from Harborview Property Group, the management company that handled Daniel's Dorchester apartment, asked to speak with me. Her voice was careful, scripted. Mrs. Sinclair, I'm calling because we received a request yesterday from a woman identifying herself as your legal guardian. She asked us to redirect all rental income to a new bank account. I gripped the edge of the counter. What was her name? Megan Harper. She provided a case number from Norfolk Probate Court and said the guardianship was already in effect. It wasn't. The hearing hadn't happened. No judge had signed anything. And yet my sister had already called a property manager, claimed legal authority she didn't have, and tried to funnel my income into her own account. I thanked the woman and asked her to do nothing until she heard from my attorney. She agreed. I called Kessler. He drafted a cease and desist letter to Harborview within the hour and flagged the incident for Campos. This is important, Kessler said. She misrepresented herself as a court-appointed guardian to a financial entity. That's not just premature, it's identity fraud. Helen texted me that evening. Megan just handed us another charge on a silver platter. That night my mother called again. Warm, sweet, perfectly timed. Honey, I heard you've been difficult about the apartment situation. Why are you making this so hard? We're trying to help. Difficult. I'd been called a lot of things in the last 2 weeks. Incapable. Unstable. Now difficult. I kept my voice flat. I'm not being difficult, Mom. I just want to understand things before I make decisions. Well, she said, and I could hear the mask slip just a fraction. Don't take too long. She hung up first. Gerald showed up at my apartment the following afternoon. No call ahead. Just a knock. And there he was, holding 2 coffees and a paper bag from the bakery on Hancock Street. Thought I'd check on my girl, he said, stepping inside before I could decide whether to let him. He sat at the kitchen table, Daniel's table, and made small talk for exactly 10 minutes. The weather, the neighbor's dog, a Red Sox trade he didn't actually care about. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a thin stack of papers. Listen, sweetheart, I had a lawyer draw these up. It's just a temporary power of attorney. Lets me handle the real estate paperwork for you. Property taxes are coming due. Insurance renewals. Things you shouldn't have to worry about right now. He slid the papers across the table. A blue pen on top. I looked down at the document. The header read, Durable General Power of Attorney. Not limited. Not temporary. General. It would give Gerald complete authority over every financial decision in my life. Dad, I need to read this first. Give me a few days? His jaw tightened. Patty, time matters here. There are bills. Deadlines. Daniel always told me to read before I sign. I think I should honor that. He couldn't argue with a dead man's advice. Not out loud, at least. He left the papers on the table and walked out without finishing his coffee. I photographed every page and sent them to Kessler. His reply came within an hour. Do not sign. This is a general POA with no restrictions. If you execute this, your father can sell every property by tomorrow morning. Also, the attorney who drafted this, Robert Voss, is a former business partner of your father's. This was coordinated. The pen was still sitting on top of the papers. Blue ink. Uncapped. Ready for me to make the biggest mistake of my life. I capped it and put it in a drawer. Helen came over Friday night with her laptop and a yellow legal pad covered in notes. Sit down, she said. I pulled everything I could from public records, and it's worse than we thought. She turned the screen toward me. Gerald Harper. Second mortgage on the Quincy house. Outstanding balance. $320,000. Federal tax lien filed 8 months ago. $95,000. 2 delinquent credit lines. A pending collections notice from a contractor he'd stiffed on a roof repair. Your father is 5 months behind on the mortgage, Helen said. The bank sent a notice of default in August. She flipped the page. Megan Harper. 4 credit cards. 3 frozen, 1 in collections. Total revolving debt. $180,000. 2 civil suits from creditors in the past 3 years. An eviction filing from a landlord in Weymouth that was settled out of court. Your sister has been spending money she doesn't have for years, Helen said, and your mother is a co-signer on the Quincy house. If Gerald loses it, Donna's out too. I stared at the numbers. Nearly $600,000 in combined debt. My family was drowning. And Daniel's estate was worth almost $4 million. The math wasn't complicated. I was their lifeboat. Helen closed the laptop and looked at me. Patty, they're not doing this because they think you can't manage money. They're doing this because they're desperate. You're the only exit they've got. I sat there for a long time, staring at the table. Daniel's table, where he used to spread out his spreadsheets and quietly, methodically, build something that could outlast him. He'd never told me about the debt. He'd never told me about a lot of things. But he'd made sure every asset was in my name. Only mine. Now I understood why. The text messages started arriving on Saturday, day 6. First, from a college friend named Angela. Hey Patty, Megan called me yesterday. She says you haven't been eating, you're not leaving the house, you're refusing help from everyone. She sounded really worried. Are you okay? Then from my Aunt Carol. Sweetheart, your mother tells me you're really struggling. I want to come visit. Please let us help you. Then from a woman I barely knew, a second cousin in Connecticut. Praying for you, Patricia. Your family loves you so much. One by one, Megan was building a story. Not to me. Around me. A narrative carefully seeded across every contact she could reach. Patricia is falling apart. Patricia can't function. Patricia needs someone to step in. And when the court date came, all those people would remember being told the same thing. I wanted to call every single one of them. I wanted to shout, I'm fine. I'm standing in my kitchen making pasta. I went for a run this morning. Helen stopped me. If you start calling everyone to defend yourself, it looks exactly like what Megan described. Someone frantic and out of control. Let your actions speak, not your panic. I put the phone down. It was the hardest thing I'd done all week. Then Lisa Parker, my closest friend from college, called directly. Patty, I didn't buy a word of it. But you should know something. She paused. Megan also asked me if I knew your bank account number. She said she needed it to help manage your bills. I closed my eyes. She wasn't just attacking my reputation. She wanted my bank information, my contacts, my credibility. Megan was trying to dismantle every part of my life that I controlled, so that when the judge looked at me, all he'd see was a woman with nothing left. But Lisa didn't give her a thing. And that mattered more than Megan would ever know. Day 8. Helen drove me to the Norfolk County District Attorney's satellite office in Canton. Detective Ray Campos met us in a small conference room with a metal table and no window art. He was 45 maybe. Broad shoulders. Calm face. The kind of man who asks questions the way a surgeon makes incisions. Precise and unhurried. Mrs. Sinclair. Walk me through it from the beginning. I told him everything. The funeral, the porch, the recording, Feldman, the POA, Megan's call to Harborview. He took notes without looking up. When I finished, he said, "Play the recording." I set my phone on the table and pressed play. My father's voice filled the room, then my mother's, then Megan's. Campos listened to the entire thing without moving. When it ended, he capped his pen and looked at me. The recording gives us reasonable basis to open an investigation, but the key is Feldman's certificate. If I can prove he signed it without examining you, that's forgery, and submitting it to the court makes it fraud upon the tribunal. How do we get it? I asked. It was filed as an exhibit with the guardianship petition. I've already requested a certified copy through the court clerk. Should have it in 5 to 7 days. Helen leaned forward. And Megan impersonating a guardian to redirect rental income? Identity fraud, Campos said. Separate charge. We're documenting it. He looked at me directly. Mrs. Sinclair, I've seen families do terrible things for money, but forging medical documents to strip someone of their legal rights? That's not family drama. That's a crime. And I will treat it like one. He stood. In the meantime, don't confront them. Don't change your routine. Let them believe everything is going according to their plan. I nodded. We shook hands. His grip was firm and steady, like a promise made with no words. 5 to 7 days. The clock didn't stop. Day 10. My mother invited me to lunch. Just the two of us. A seafood place in Hull with a view of the harbor. We used to go there when I was little, back when things were simpler, or back when I thought they were. She looked tired, thinner than I remembered. When she hugged me at the door, she held on a beat too long. We ordered. She talked about the weather, the new neighbors, a recipe she'd clipped from a magazine. Normal things, safe things. And then the tears came. "I'm sorry I wasn't at the funeral," she said, voice breaking. "I was scared. I saw you hurting so much and I didn't know what to say." I froze. I'm a terrible mother. Her tears were real. I believe that. What I don't believe is the reason behind them. She dabbed her eyes and transitioned, smooth as a scene change. "Sweetheart, $4 million is an enormous responsibility. I don't want anyone taking advantage of you." "Anyone." She said that word sitting right across from me. "Have you thought about letting Megan manage some of it? She's always been good with numbers." Megan. Good with numbers. The woman $180,000 in credit card debt. I almost broke character. Almost. "I'll think about it, Mom." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Your father has everything ready. You just need to sign one little paper." When the check came, she reached for her wallet. The waitress ran her card and came back 30 seconds later, leaning down with a quiet, "I'm sorry, ma'am, it's been declined." My mother's face went white. It must be the machine. I paid in cash. I didn't say a word. But I understood. Her card was declined, her house was underwater, and the only plan she had was sitting across the table, refusing to sign. Her tears were real, but the love behind them had a price tag. Day 12. Campos called at 7 in the morning. "I have Feldman's certificate," he said, "and it's exactly what we expected." I sat on the edge of the bed and listened. The signature line is filled, Nathan Feldman, MD. The diagnosis line reads, "Severe grief disorder with marked impairment of financial and personal decision-making." But the line for date of patient examination, blank, and the line for method of evaluation, also blank. I exhaled. I pulled Feldman's appointment records for the date he signed the certificate. "Your name doesn't appear anywhere. Not as Patricia Sinclair, not as Patricia Harper. No entry, no chart, no file." He paused to let that settle. "He signed a legal medical document certifying your incapacity without ever being in the same room as you. That's forgery. And because it was submitted to a court of law as part of a guardianship petition, it's fraud upon the tribunal, which is a felony." "What happens now?" "I'm obtaining a warrant for Feldman's arrest this morning. Once he's in custody, I expect him to cooperate. Doctors usually do when their license is on the line. When he talks, he'll confirm who asked him to sign. And that gives us the chain to your father, your mother, and your sister." I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the street was quiet. A school bus passed. "Detective Campos, when you go to my parents' house, I want to be there." A long pause. "Are you sure?" "I need to see their faces, and they need to see mine." He agreed. Sunday morning, 10 a.m., at the Harper residence in Quincy. 2 more days. I already knew what I'd wear. The same black coat I wore to Daniel's funeral. Not for mourning this time. For closing a chapter. Day 13. Gerald called that evening. The mask was off. "Patricia." Not sweetheart, not honey. Patricia. "I don't know who's been filling your head, but this little rebellion needs to stop. You need to sign the power of attorney." "No. I already filed with the court. The hearing is Monday. You're going to embarrass this family in front of a judge?" "I know you filed, Dad. My attorney told me." Silence. I could hear him breathing. Then, "You hired a lawyer? You think you know what you're doing?" "I think this conversation should end here. You've never managed a single thing in your life." His voice cracked. Not with sadness, with fury. "Daniel did everything for you. The bills, the taxes, the accounts, all of it. And now you think you can handle $4 million? You can't even—" "Dad." I kept my voice level. Flat. Like a wall. "If you were trying to help me, you wouldn't need a doctor to say I'm crazy." Dead air. 3 full seconds. That doctor examined you. No, he didn't, and we both know it. He hung up. I sat on the couch and stared at my hands. They were shaking. But not from fear. From the kind of anger that sits at the base of your spine and stays warm for hours. I didn't realize until later that I'd been recording the call. Not intentionally, at first. I'd been so focused on staying calm that I forgot I'd hit record when I saw his name on the screen. But Massachusetts is a one-party consent state when you're a participant in the conversation. The recording was legal. And Gerald had just admitted, on tape, that he'd filed the petition. That he knew about Feldman. That he expected me to sign. Tomorrow was Sunday. One more sleep until it all ended. Saturday night. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt permanent. I sat on the floor of the bedroom closet, the place that still smelled most like Daniel, and opened the small fireproof box he'd kept on the top shelf. Inside, our marriage certificate, his life insurance policy, the deed summaries Kessler had given me, and at the bottom, a sealed envelope with my name on it in his handwriting. I'd found it the week after he died but hadn't opened it. I wasn't ready. Tonight I was. The letter was one page, blue ink. His handwriting was always too small, like he was trying to fit more into less space than anyone gave him. Patty, if you're reading this, I'm sorry I couldn't stay longer, but I need you to know something I should have said out loud more often. You are stronger than you think. You've always been strong. You just never had permission to believe it. Not from your parents. Not from anyone. So here it is, in writing. I believe in you. I always did. Daniel. I folded the letter and pressed it to my chest. And then I cried. Not the polite kind, not the kind you do at funerals. The ugly, heaving kind that comes from a place so deep you didn't know it existed. Daniel wrote that letter knowing his heart was failing, knowing I'd need it, knowing exactly who might come for me when he was gone. I cried for 20 minutes, then I washed my face. I put the letter in my coat pocket. I called Helen. Tomorrow, I'm ready. Campos will be there at 10. Kessler will be there at 10. I'll be there at 9:30. Helen? Yeah? Thank you, for believing me when no one else did. She was quiet for a moment. That's what the good ones do, Patty. We show up. I set my alarm for 6. I'd be at my parents' house before any of them, because I wanted to be the one who knocked. Sunday morning, October 28th. Clear sky. No rain. Not this time. I pulled into my parents' driveway at 8 a.m. Same cracked asphalt. Same basketball hoop from 1996 rusted at the rim. I sat in the car for 2 full minutes, both hands on the wheel, breathing. Then I got out. Black coat. Hair pulled back. No makeup. Daniel's letter in my left pocket. Phone in my right. I knocked. My father opened the door in a flannel shirt and slippers. His eyebrows went up. Patricia, it's 8 in the morning. What are you? I need to talk to everyone, all 3 of you, before things go any further. He studied my face. Whatever he saw there, he stepped aside. The house smelled like old coffee and stale toast. My mother was at the kitchen counter in her bathrobe, pouring cream into a mug. Megan was curled on the sofa with a blanket, scrolling her phone. They both looked up when I walked in. Donna smiled, automatic, mechanical. Sweetheart, what a surprise. Megan didn't smile. She watched me the way a cat watches a door. I sat in the armchair across from the sofa, the same chair I'd sat in as a kid watching Saturday cartoons. Now I was watching 3 people who'd conspired to erase my legal existence. I want to hear it from you, I said. All of it. What the plan is. What you think is best for me. Gerald sat down across from me, squared his shoulders. This was his territory. Fine, he said. We've been trying to tell you. This is about protecting your future. The estate. The properties. Your mother and I just want what's best. Donna nodded. Megan said nothing. I let him talk. About responsibility. About family. About how financial decisions were too much for someone in your condition. When he finished, I asked one question. When was the last time you saw Dr. Feldman, Dad? His face froze. Mid-breath, mid-sentence, mid-lie. And that's when the doorbell rang. Gerald looked at me. I didn't look away. The bell rang again. He walked to the door and opened it. Detective Ray Campos stood on the porch in a dark blazer, badge visible on his belt. Behind him, Daniel Kessler in a charcoal suit and Helen Marsh with a manila folder under her arm. "Mr. Gerald Harper?" Campos said. "I'm Detective Ray Campos, Norfolk County Police. May I come in?" Gerald's mouth opened. Nothing came out. He stepped back. They filed into the living room. Donna stood up from her stool so fast she knocked her coffee mug off the counter. It shattered on the tile, and nobody picked it up. Megan pulled the blanket off her lap and sat upright. Her phone dropped between the cushions. Campos took the center of the room the way a man takes a stage. "I'm here regarding a petition for guardianship filed with Norfolk Probate Court by you, Mr. Harper, on behalf of your daughter Patricia Sinclair. That's a private family. When the medical certificate attached to that petition is fraudulent, Mr. Harper, it becomes a criminal matter." The room went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that has weight. Campos pulled a clear document sleeve from his jacket. Inside was a photocopy of Feldman's certificate. "This certificate, signed by Dr. Nathan Feldman, declares your daughter mentally incapacitated. But Dr. Feldman never examined your daughter. The date of patient examination field is blank. His appointment log shows no record of her. He has no chart, no file, no notes." Donna sank back onto the stool. Megan's jaw went slack. "Dr. Feldman was taken into custody at 7 a.m. this morning," Campos said. "He has been cooperative." He let the word cooperative hang in the air. Gerald's face drained of color. Not slowly. All at once. Like someone pulled a plug. He knew what cooperative meant. It meant Feldman talked. Gerald tried. "I'll give him that." "Feldman, whatever he told you, he misunderstood. I asked him for a general assessment. I never told him to." "Mr. Harper." Campos didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Dr. Feldman states that you personally requested he sign a certificate of incapacity for your daughter without conducting an examination. He states your wife, Donna Harper, provided the specific diagnostic language, and he states your daughter, Megan Harper, was aware of and participated in the plan." Donna let out a sound. Half sob, half gasp. She pressed both hands to her mouth. Megan shot to her feet. "I didn't know about the doctor. This was Dad's idea. I had nothing to do with—" Gerald spun toward her. "You called the real estate agent before we even had the papers. You called the property manager pretending to be her guardian. Because you told me to." They turned on each other in under 10 seconds. Right there. In front of a detective, an attorney, and me. I stood up. The room went still. Everyone looked at me. My father mid-accusation, my mother mid-sob, my sister mid-excuse. Campos, Kessler, Helen. I spoke quietly, the way you speak when you want every word to land. "I heard everything. The night of Daniel's funeral. I stood outside that door. I pointed to the front entrance, 5 feet away. And listened. I heard Dad say Feldman would sign the papers. I heard Megan say she'd already called an agent for the Cape House, and I heard Mom say—" I looked directly at my mother. "Daniel dying is the best thing that's happened to this family." Donna's face crumpled. "Patricia, I didn't mean—" "You said it, Mom, word for word. And I recorded it." Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The broken coffee mug was still on the kitchen floor, and the silence was louder than anything any of them had ever said. "I'm not here for revenge," I said. "I'm here to tell you. I heard you. I know. And I choose not to forgive." Campos nodded toward the front door. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside. They'd been waiting on the porch the whole time. "Gerald Harper." Campos's voice was level, procedural. "You are under arrest for fraud upon the court, forgery of medical documents, and conspiracy to misappropriate assets through fraudulent guardianship. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." My father stood still while the officer placed the cuffs on him. He looked at me once. Not with anger. with something closer to disbelief. Like he'd walked into a room he thought he owned and found every lock changed. "Patricia," he said, "you can't do this to your father." I didn't answer. Donna was next. She didn't resist. Her wrists were so thin the cuffs had to be adjusted. Tears ran down her face in 2 clean lines. "Baby girl, I'm sorry. I was desperate. You have to understand." I looked at her. My eyes were red but dry. "Desperation doesn't give you the right to declare me insane, Mom." She had no answer for that. The officer led her toward the door. Campos turned to Megan. "Megan Harper, you are also under arrest for identity fraud, misrepresenting yourself as a court-appointed guardian to a financial entity, and attempted theft by deception." Megan's legs buckled. She grabbed the arm of the sofa. Patty, please, I just..." "Don't." One word. I didn't need to. They led all 3 of them out the front door and into separate vehicles. Across the street, Mrs. Kowalski stood on her lawn in her housecoat, watering can frozen mid-tilt. The Nguyen kids next door watched from behind their screen door. A mail carrier slowed his truck, stared, and drove on. The living room was empty now. Just me, Helen, Kessler, and the smell of cold coffee and broken porcelain. Helen put her hand on my shoulder. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Helen drove. I sat in the passenger seat with my hands in my lap, staring at the road. We didn't talk for 15 minutes. She didn't turn on the radio. She just drove, and I just sat, and the world outside the windshield moved forward in a way that felt completely disconnected from whatever had just happened inside that house. Finally, I said it. "I just sent my parents to jail." Helen didn't hesitate. "No, they sent themselves." I leaned my head against the window. The glass was cold. "You know the thing I keep thinking about? When I was 6, my dad taught me to ride a bike, in that same driveway." He held the back of the seat and ran beside me until I could balance on my own. He was laughing. I remember his laugh. Helen glanced at me. "Same hands," I said. "Same hands that held the seat. Those are the hands that signed a petition to take away my rights." She didn't try to comfort me with words. She reached over and squeezed my arm once, then put both hands back on the wheel. We pulled up to my apartment. She turned off the engine. "Patty, you don't need to be strong tonight. You just did one of the hardest things a person can do. If you need to fall apart, this is the night for it." I unbuckled my seatbelt and looked at her. "I've been falling apart for 3 weeks. I think tonight I just want to sleep." She nodded. "I'll check on you in the morning." I walked inside. The apartment was exactly the way I'd left it. Daniel's coffee mug still in the drying rack, the POA papers still on the table, the blue pen still in the drawer. Everything in place. Everything the same. But I was different. And there was no going back from that. 2 weeks passed. Kessler called on a Tuesday with the full update. Gerald Harper was formally indicted on 3 counts: fraud upon the court, criminal forgery, and conspiracy to misappropriate assets through fraudulent guardianship proceedings. He posted bail at $50,000, using the Quincy house as collateral, the same house that already had 2 mortgages on it. Donna Harper was indicted on 2 counts: conspiracy and accessory to fraud. She was released on her own recognizance but barred from contacting me by court order. No calls, no texts, no third-party messages. Megan Harper was charged with identity fraud and attempted theft by deception. Her passport was surrendered. She was prohibited from leaving the state of Massachusetts pending trial. Dr. Nathan Feldman had his medical license suspended, pending a full review by the Massachusetts Board of Registration in Medicine. He was charged with criminal forgery. He was cooperating with the prosecution in exchange for a possible reduced sentence. The guardianship petition was dismissed with prejudice. Permanently. No refiling. The judge's written order noted clear and compelling evidence of fraudulent medical certification and called the filing an abuse of the guardianship process. I was confirmed as the sole legal owner of all 4 properties. No conditions, no oversight, no guardian, just me. Kessler also mentioned one more thing: Robert Voss, The attorney who'd drafted the power of attorney Gerald brought to my apartment was under investigation by the Massachusetts Board of Bar Overseers for his role in the scheme. "You're clear, Mrs. Sinclair," Kessler said. "Legally, financially, entirely. Your husband made sure of that, and you finished what he started." I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wall for a very long time, not thinking, not planning, just sitting in a silence that, for the first time in weeks, didn't feel threatening. The call came 3 weeks later, an unfamiliar number. I almost let it go to voicemail. I wish I had. "Patricia," my mother's voice, small and cracked, like a cup that's been glued back together one too many times. "I know I'm not supposed to call, I know, but please, just 30 seconds. I should have hung up. I didn't. Your father is going to lose the house. The bank won't extend the loan. I don't know where I'm going to live, Patricia. I don't know what happens to me." I stood at the kitchen window, watching the branches of the oak tree sway against a gray sky. "Mom, you called me from a blocked number. You're violating a court order right now. I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all of it. I was wrong. Your father was wrong. We were desperate." "You were desperate," I said. "So you decided to have me declared mentally unfit. You wanted a doctor to write a piece of paper that said I couldn't think for myself. And then Megan would have sold everything Daniel left me. The apartments, the Cape House, every single thing he built. And I'd be locked in a guardianship, unable to make a single decision about my own life." I paused. "Did you think about what would have happened to me?" "Nothing. Just the sound of her breathing. I don't hate you, Mom, but I can't trust you. And I won't let you close enough to make me question my own mind again." I heard her cry, quiet, measured, the kind of crying that knows it's lost. "Don't call again." I hung up. Then I called Kessler to report the contact violation. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't feel strong. I felt like someone who'd amputated something necessary and was learning to walk without it. But I was walking. That was the point. I spent the next few days undoing what Megan had built. Short emails, simple language, no drama. "Hi, Angela. I wanted to reach out and let you know I'm doing well. I have an attorney handling my affairs, and the situation Megan described to you was not accurate. I appreciate your concern. Patty." "Aunt Carol, thank you for checking in. I'm okay. Things have been difficult, but I'm getting the help I need. The right kind. Love you." I sent 7 of those emails. I didn't explain the arrests. I didn't mention the court case. I didn't defend myself against Megan's narrative point by point. I just showed up, present, coherent, whole, and let that be the answer. Lisa called the same afternoon. "Patty, I knew from the second Megan opened her mouth that it was garbage. I'm glad you're okay." Aunt Carol called the next morning. "Sweetheart, I never believed that girl. She's been lying since she was 12 years old. You know that. We all know that." Not everyone had been fooled. Some people saw through it from the start. They just didn't know how to say so until I gave them permission. That Friday, I drove to Cape Cod alone. The house was smaller than I'd imagined. Pale blue shingles, white trim, a wraparound porch that faced the Atlantic. The property manager had left the heat on. The floors were clean. The ocean was doing what it always does. Rolling in, pulling back, indifferent to everything. I stood on the porch with Daniel's letter in my hand. The wind pressed my coat flat against my ribs. I read his words again. "You are stronger than you think. You've always been strong. You just never had permission to believe it." This time, when I folded the letter, something was different. This time, I believed him. 6 months later, I was living in the Cape House full-time. The move wasn't dramatic. I packed the Boston apartment over 2 weekends, hired a small moving company, and closed the door on Elm Terrace without looking back. Daniel's coffee mug came with me. So did the fireproof box. The POA papers went into a shredder. I enrolled in a financial literacy course, an online certificate program through a community college in Hyannis. 12 weeks. Balance sheets, tax filings, property management basics. Things Daniel used to handle. Things I was learning to handle myself. Kessler introduced me to a reputable property management firm. They took over the 3 Boston apartments. Tenant screening, maintenance, rent collection. I reviewed the monthly statements. I asked questions. I understood the answers. For the first time in my adult life, I knew exactly where my money was and what it was doing. In March, I took a part-time position at a nonprofit in Falmouth called Second Shore, an organization that supports young widows rebuilding their lives after loss. I didn't need the paycheck. I needed the purpose. I knew what it felt like to lose everything in 1 week and have no one standing behind you. Helen visited every month. We'd sit on the porch with wine and watch the waves turn gold at sunset. She never once said, "I told you so." She just showed up. That's what the good ones do. The sentencing came down in April. Gerald received 18 months in federal custody. Donna got 12 months of probation and 200 hours of community service. Megan was sentenced to 6 months in county jail, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. I didn't attend the sentencing hearing. I didn't need to hear anything else from that courtroom. The ocean was louder, and it had better things to say. I don't talk to my father. I don't talk to my mother. I don't talk to Megan. That's not anger. It's architecture. I built a wall where there used to be a door, and I'm not looking for the blueprints to undo it. Gerald sent a letter from the federal facility in Devons. I recognized his handwriting on the envelope, the same tight, slanted script he used to sign my birthday cards. I held it for about 10 seconds. Then I wrote, "Return to sender," on the front and dropped it in the mailbox. Megan tried going through Lisa, a voicemail. "Tell Patty I'm sorry. Tell her I'll do anything." Lisa forwarded it. I listened to it once, then deleted it. I don't delete it out of cruelty. I delete it because keeping it would mean leaving a thread, and threads get pulled. People ask me if I've forgiven them. Friends, co-workers at Second Shore, even my therapist, gently, during our 3rd session. Here's what I've learned. Forgiveness is putting down the weight. It's choosing not to carry their choices on your back every morning. I'm working on that part. Some days are easier than others, but boundaries are different. Boundaries aren't about feelings. They're about safety. Forgiveness is internal. It's between me and the weight. Boundaries are external. They're between me and the people who put the weight there. I will not unlock the door. Not for apologies, not for tears, not for blood. Daniel wrote something in that letter that I come back to on the hard days. You've always been strong. You just never had permission to believe it. He was right. But I'd add one thing. I don't need permission anymore. Not from him. Not from them. Not from anyone. This morning I woke up at 6. Made coffee. Walked out to the porch. The ocean was doing its thing. The same thing it did yesterday and the day before and the day 100 years ago. Rolling in, pulling back, not asking anyone's permission. There's no one at my door asking me to sign anything. No one on the phone telling me I'm not capable. No one in the next room whispering about how to take what's mine while I'm still standing in the cemetery. Daniel left me 4 walls and a roof, 3 apartments and a house by the sea. But the thing he actually left me, the thing no forged certificate or fraudulent petition could ever touch, was the belief that I deserve to be safe, that I am enough, that the quiet voice in my head that says, "You can do this," isn't lying. If you're listening to this and you're in a situation like mine, if someone in your life is telling you that you're not smart enough, not strong enough, not stable enough to make your own decisions, I need you to hear me. That is the language of someone who wants to control you. It is not the truth. The strongest revenge isn't sending anyone to prison. It's building a life where the people who tried to destroy you have no power left. Not over your money, not over your mind, not over your morning coffee on a porch that belongs to you and no one else. I don't tell this story to teach a lesson. I tell it because when I was standing on that porch in Quincy, listening to my family plan my destruction, I wished someone had told me a story like this first. So I'd know I wasn't crazy. And I'd know I had the right to fight back. That's my story. If it reached you, hit subscribe. Not for me, but so you don't miss the next one. These stories matter, and the people in this community understand why. If you know someone who needs to hear this, a friend, a sister, anyone being told they're not enough, send them this video. And if you want another story about someone who refused to break when everyone expected them to fold, check the link in the description. I'll see you there. Vacate the room, my father said, not whispering, not asking. The same evening, my brother showed up with 2 suitcases and a pregnant wife I'd met exactly once. Tiffany stood behind Marcus, scanning my bedroom. The room I'd painted myself. The shelves I'd mounted with my own drill. Every square foot paid for with my own money. And added, "It would be better if you left the house altogether." My father nodded. My mother looked at the floor. Nobody said another word. I left. I packed everything I owned into 3 cardboard boxes and walked out of a house that had my name, and only my name, on the deed. But what my family didn't know, what they'd discover just a few days later, made Tiffany call me at 11 o'clock at night, voice shaking. "It's not true. Tell me it's not true." Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. My name is Sabrina Brennan. I'm 29 years old, and I'm a licensed civil engineer in Massachusetts. Now let me take you back 4 years. To the day I signed the papers on a house I thought would keep my family together. I remember the pen. It was a cheap blue ballpoint, the kind you grab from a cup on a receptionist's desk, and I used it to sign the most expensive document of my life. March 14th, 4 years ago, in a title company office on State Street in Springfield. The notary stamped the deed of trust, slid it across the table, and said, "Congratulations, Ms. Brennan, it's all yours." All mine. My name, Sabrina Brennan, was the only name on that deed. No co-signer, no co-owner. Just me, a 25-year-old with a freshly minted PE license, a starting salary of $72,000, and an FHA loan for $234,000. Monthly payment, $2,340, due on the first of every month for the next 30 years. The house was more than I needed. 2 stories, a half-finished basement, 3 bedrooms, a backyard with a maple tree that dropped leaves all over the driveway every October. I didn't need 3 bedrooms. I needed 1. But I bought a house with 3 because my father, Gerald Brennan, 58, retired plumber with a bad back and a disability check of $1,480 a month, had just sold the mobile home he and my mother had lived in for 11 years. They had nowhere to go. So I made room. The deal was simple. They'd move in, contribute toward utilities, and we'd be a family under one roof. That was the deal. Verbal. No lease. No written agreement. Just trust. They moved in the following week. My mother brought her ceramic rooster collection. My father brought his recliner and his opinions. Neither of them ever paid a single utility bill. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that I spent 4 years believing that if I just kept paying, kept maintaining, kept proving, they'd eventually see what I was worth. They never did. Let me tell you about the hierarchy in the Brennan household because it'll explain everything that comes next. Marcus Brennan, my older brother, 33. Handsome in the way that gets you a second date but never a second promotion. He sold used cars at a dealership called Riverside Motors and talked about it like he was closing mergers on Wall Street. My father adored him. Gerald Brennan had one belief that governed his entire worldview. Sons carry the name, daughters carry the groceries. Marcus was the future. I was the infrastructure. When Marcus graduated from community college, which took him 3 attempts and a D- in statistics, my father threw a backyard barbecue. 16 people, burgers, beer, a banner that said "Proud of You," son in block letters. When I graduated with honors from the civil engineering program at UMass Amherst, cum laude, Dean's List 7 out of 8 semesters, my father sent a text message. 4 words, "Good for you, kid." No period, no exclamation point, no barbecue. When I passed the PE exam, A license that fewer than 25% of engineering graduates achieve, my mother said. That's nice, honey. Your brother just got promoted to senior sales. Senior sales? At a used car lot? With $38,000 in credit card debt. But Gerald didn't know about the debt. Or maybe he did, and didn't care. What I know for certain is that he'd been quietly lending Marcus money from his disability check. $5,000 here, $3,000 there, and then turning around and asking me to help with the bills this month, sweetheart. The prescriptions are killing us. I always said yes, because that's what infrastructure does. It holds everything up, and nobody notices until it's gone. Then, one Friday evening, Marcus called with news that changed everything. Before I get to that phone call, I need you to understand the numbers. Because numbers don't lie, and in my family, they were the only thing that didn't. Over 4 years, I paid 48 mortgage installments at $2,340 each. That's $112,320. Just principal and interest. On top of that, I covered the electric bill, which averaged $380 a month in Massachusetts, where winters are serious. Water and sewer ran about $90, internet and cable. My father insisted on the sports package, added another $200. Groceries I supplemented at roughly $150 a month because my parents ate every meal at home and never once pushed a cart through a supermarket. Add it all up. $147,360, conservatively, over 4 years, from my paycheck, into a house where I slept in one bedroom and asked nothing from anyone. I also painted the exterior twice. Did it myself? 2 weekends each time, up on a 20-foot extension ladder. I replaced the roof section over the back porch when it started leaking. $4,200 out of pocket. I installed a heating unit in the basement because my father complained the house was drafty downstairs. $3,100. My neighbor, Louise Beckett, 67 years old, lived next door for 11 years, saw all of it. Every ladder session, every bag of mulch. Every Saturday morning, I was out there with a snow shovel at 6 a.m. while my parents slept. Louise stopped me once, leaning over the fence. "Honey, where's your family when you're up on that ladder?" I smiled and said, "They're inside. That's kind of the point, so they can be comfortable inside." Louise gave me a look I didn't understand then. I understand it now. It was pity. Then Marcus called. "Sabrina, I'm coming home, and I'm not coming alone." Marcus's voice had that particular brightness it only got when he wanted something. I'd heard it before. When he needed a cosigner, I said no. When he wanted to borrow my car for a weekend that turned into 2 weeks. When he asked me to talk to Dad about sending him more money. This time, he was bringing Tiffany, his wife of 8 months, 7 months pregnant. They arrived on a Friday evening. 2 large suitcases, 3 boxes of baby supplies, and Tiffany, who stepped out of Marcus's car and looked at the house the way you'd appraise something at an auction. She was 30 years old, worked part-time as a receptionist at a dental office, and had a way of making every sentence sound like she was doing you a favor by speaking. My father was ready. I realized that within 30 seconds of their arrival, because the living room furniture had already been rearranged, a corner cleared, a space made. Gerald had known they were coming. He'd prepared. And he hadn't told me. But Tiffany took one look at the living room and shook her head. "This won't work. We need a real bedroom. I'm 7 months along." Gerald turned to me. Not asked. Turned. The way you'd turn to a piece of furniture that needed repositioning. "Vacate the room." "That's my room, Dad. I've been in that room for 4 years. And Marcus needs it now. He has a family. I am family. You know what I mean." Tiffany added her line, the one I already told you about. And then my mother appeared in the hallway holding 3 flattened cardboard boxes. The same brand, the same size. The ones I'd used to move in 4 years ago. She'd kept them. 4 years she'd kept those boxes in the garage, as if she'd always known this day was coming. I told myself it was temporary. 1 week, maybe 2, until we figured things out. That's what Gerald said. Just temporary, Sabrina. Just until things settle. So I moved downstairs. To the basement. The one I'd spent $3,100 heating. Bare concrete walls. A single overhead bulb on a pull chain. A mattress I dragged down from the guest closet, set directly on the floor because there was no bed frame. The air smelled like mildite and old cardboard, and in the corner, a slow drip from a joint in the cold water pipe marked time with a rhythm that kept me awake the first night. Upstairs, Tiffany made herself at home. The next afternoon, she posted a photo of my old bedroom, now arranged as a nursery with a crib and pastel bunting, to her Instagram. Family always makes room for the next generation, followed by a pink heart emoji. 212 likes, comments full of heart eyes and congratulations, and what a beautiful space. Nobody asked whose space it had been 24 hours earlier. Marcus passed me on the stairs the following morning. "It's just temporary, Sabrina. Don't make this weird." I slept in that basement for 3 nights. On the 3rd night, a pipe joint gave way slightly. Not a burst, but a steady seep. And I woke at 3 a.m. with my back soaked through the mattress. I lay there in the dark, water creeping through the fabric, staring at the ceiling, which was their floor. And I thought, I am paying $2,340 a month to sleep in a puddle beneath my own house. The next morning, I went upstairs to make coffee. Tiffany was sitting at the kitchen table using the espresso machine I'd bought. She looked up. "Oh, you're still here?" That was the first time in my life I understood that love and ownership are not the same thing. It happened on a Tuesday. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot at work, eating a granola bar, when my phone buzzed with a notification from my credit monitoring service. I'd signed up for it 3 years earlier. Not out of paranoia, but because my engineering brain likes tracking data. The alert read, "New lien detected on property at 147 Maplewood Drive, Springfield, MA." I read it twice, then a 3rd time. Then I put the granola bar down and opened the full report. A $95,000 mortgage lien. Filed through Greenfield Credit Union, a small community bank on Carew Street. The same one where my father had his checking account. The borrower's signature on the deed of trust addendum, Sabrina Brennan. Except I had never signed anything. I had never been to Greenfield Credit Union. I had never authorized a lien on my property. I pulled up the signature image on the PDF. It looked close enough to fool a casual glance. But I knew my own handwriting the way a musician knows their own instrument. The capital B in Brennan was wrong. I loop it tight at the top. This one swooped wide, the way you'd copy it from a photocopy. And the middle initial, my middle initial, E, for Elizabeth, was written in print. I always write it in cursive. Someone had traced my signature. From the used car lease I'd signed 2 years earlier, the one my father had helpfully photocopied for his records. I called the credit union. A manager confirmed the loan had been processed 3 months prior by a representative described as a family member of the property owner. The witness on the application was listed as Donna Brennan, my mother. $95,000. My name. My house. Without my knowledge. Without my consent. I sat in that parking lot with both hands on the steering wheel, shaking. Not from fear. From rage. If this lien hit my credit report officially within the next 30 days, my score of 761, built over nearly a decade of discipline, would collapse. And with it, everything I'd worked for. The clock started ticking. There's a Dunkin' on Boston Road that stays open 24 hours. I sat there until 1 in the morning with a medium black coffee and a paper napkin I'd flattened on the table. I drew a line down the middle. Left side. What I lose if I fight. Right side. What I lose if I don't. The left side was short but heavy. My relationship with my parents, whatever was left of it, the possibility of being cut off by the extended family, Aunt Patrice's Christmas cards, Uncle Ray's handshake at Thanksgiving, and Tiffany was 7 months pregnant, which meant any move I made would be framed as an attack on an expectant mother. I could already hear the narrative Gerald would build. The right side was longer. $95,000 in fraudulent debt attached to my name. A credit score in freefall. The potential loss of my ability to refinance, to borrow, to function financially as an independent adult. And the certainty, the absolute mathematical certainty, that if I did nothing, they would do it again. Because people who steal from you once and face no consequences don't stop. They just get bolder. I looked at both columns. Then I crumpled the napkin and threw it away. The decision had already been made the moment I saw that forged signature. I just needed the napkin to confirm it. The next morning, I called Rita Calloway. She was a real estate attorney in Springfield, 17 years of practice, specializing in property disputes. A colleague's mother knew her. I told Rita everything. She listened without interrupting for 6 minutes straight. Then she said, "Sabrina, what your father did is forgery. What your mother did is aiding and abetting. What Marcus did is fraud. I need you to not say a single word to anyone in your family until we have everything documented." For the first time in 4 years, I wasn't paying bills to keep a family together. I was paying a lawyer to keep myself intact. Rita worked fast. Within 48 hours, she had filed a formal request under my rights as the property owner for every document related to the lien. Greenfield Credit Union was obligated to comply, and they did. Reluctantly, but they did. The packet arrived at Rita's office on a Thursday afternoon. I drove there straight from work, and we spread the pages across her conference table like evidence in a crime scene. Because that's what it was. The forged deed of trust addendum. My signature, or the version of it someone had traced from that car lease, at the bottom of page 4. My mother's name as witness on page 5, in her unmistakable handwriting, Donna Brennan, written with the same green ink pen she'd used for 20 years. Then the transaction records. Rita had highlighted them in yellow. $38,000 transferred directly to a credit card account registered to Marcus G. Brennan. His entire outstanding balance, wiped clean in one wire. $22,000 to Riverside Motors. A down payment on a vehicle. $15,000 withdrawn in cash by Donna Brennan over 3 separate visits. And $20,000 sitting untouched in Gerald Brennan's personal savings account, a slush fund, a retirement cushion built on my name. $95,000, parceled out like Christmas gifts, while I slept on a wet mattress in the basement. Rita looked at me over the top of her reading glasses. They thought they were clever. But clever people don't forge documents on a property they don't own with a credit union that keeps digital records of everything. She also told me something I hadn't considered. The loan officer who'd processed the application, a man named Derek Gaines, had bypassed the standard identity verification protocol. No in-person confirmation, no video call. Just Gerald's word and a photocopied signature. "We have more than enough," Rita said. "Now, when do you want to move?" Day 12. That's how long it took from the moment I discovered the forged lien to the moment I walked out of 147 Maplewood Drive with 3 cardboard boxes, a duffel bag, and a plan. I'd signed a lease 3 days earlier on a studio apartment 8 minutes away, 900 square feet, clean, quiet, $1,100 a month. I signed it with the same pen I used for mortgage payments, and for the first time, the money felt like it was going somewhere that belonged to me. The packing took less than 2 hours. 4 years in that house, and my entire life fit into 3 boxes and a bag. Clothes, laptop, my PE license in its frame, the small toolbox I'd used to fix everything from the kitchen faucet to the porch railing, a photo of my grandmother Helen that I kept on my nightstand. Before I left, I placed a white envelope on the kitchen table. Inside, a photocopy of the deed of trust, my name, highlighted, and a single handwritten note on plain paper. "This house is mine. The mortgage is mine. Everything else is about to change." I drove away at 6:15 in the evening. The maple tree in the front yard was beginning to turn, the first edges of orange creeping into the green. I didn't look back. Gerald found the envelope at 7. Donna told me later what happened. He opened it, read the deed copy, read the note, and tore the paper in half. Then he said, "She's bluffing." He didn't know that the deed copy was just a copy. The original was locked in a safe deposit box at my bank, along with every piece of documentation Rita had certified. He tore up a photocopy and thought he'd won. I let him think that. He had 18 days left. The first week after I left, the Brennan family settled into my house like they'd inherited it. Tiffany posted an Instagram story from the living room. "Finally, a house that feels like home." 187 views. She'd rearranged the furniture, hung a wreath on the front door, and placed a welcome mat over the threshold I'd paid for. Marcus mowed the lawn for what I'm fairly confident was the first time in his life and posted a selfie with the caption, "Dad duty starts early." Gerald controlled the narrative the way he controlled everything, decisively and without evidence. He called Uncle Ray. He called Aunt Patrice. He called his own mother, Helen. His version of events, as I later pieced together from multiple sources, went like this. Sabrina moved out. She wanted her own space, very independent girl. No mention of the basement, no mention of the eviction from my bedroom, no mention of the forged mortgage, just a proud father whose capable daughter had decided to spread her wings. My mother called me once that week, not to ask how I was, not to say she missed me. She called to ask, "Did you pay the electric bill before you left?" Gerald said the lights flickered. I let that sentence sit in silence for 3 full seconds before I answered. Meanwhile, Rita and I were working through our checklist. The fraud complaint to Greenfield Credit Union. Filed. Formal disputes with all 3 credit bureaus. Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. Submitted with supporting documentation. And the final piece. The 30-day notice to quit. Prepared and ready. Addressed to Gerald Brennan, Donna Brennan, Marcus Brennan, and Tiffany Brennan. Under Massachusetts law, occupants without a lease are entitled to 30 days written notice before eviction proceedings can begin. Rita scheduled the process server for day 17. The same day as Gerald's open house. 45 guests. Perfect timing. It started with the heating system. Day 5 after I left, the thermostat in the main unit glitched. A quirk I'd learned to fix myself by resetting the breaker and recalibrating the temperature sensor. It took 90 seconds if you knew what you were doing. Gerald did not know what he was doing. He called an HVAC company. They quoted him $2,800 for a diagnostic and potential part replacement. Gerald did not have $2,800. Day 7, the electric bill arrived. $340 for the month, standard for a Massachusetts winter with 4 adults running heat around the clock. The bill was still in my name because the transfer request I'd submitted hadn't processed yet. Gerald called me. "When are you coming back? The house needs you." Not, "We miss you," not, "Are you okay?" "The house needs you." As if I were a part of the plumbing. "I'm not coming back, Dad. You should contact the utility company directly. The account is under my name, and I've already submitted a transfer request." "What do you mean, transfer request?" "I mean the bills will be in your name starting next month, or whoever's name you'd like." 10 seconds of silence. Then he hung up without another word. That evening, Tiffany sent me a text. I still have it, word for word. "This is really selfish timing. I'm due in 8 weeks." Selfish. That word. It's remarkable how precisely selfish maps onto inconvenient for me. I'd paid $147,000 into that household over 4 years. I'd heated the basement at my own expense so the house would be comfortable. I'd replaced the roof so the rain wouldn't touch them. And the first time I stopped, the very first time I wasn't useful, I was selfish. I didn't respond to the text. Some sentences don't deserve an audience. My mother called at 9 on a Wednesday night. She was crying. The practiced, measured kind of crying that rises and falls at convenient intervals, the kind that sounds like grief but operates like a crowbar. "Your father is stressed. His back is worse. You know he can't handle the house alone." "Mom, I maintained that house alone for 4 years. Dad was there the whole time." "That's different. You're young. You're strong." "I'm also the person whose signature was forged on a $95,000 mortgage. Did you want to talk about that?" The crying stopped. Not tapered off, stopped. Like someone had pressed pause on a recording. A long silence. Then, very quietly, "Your father said it was for the family. It was for Marcus's credit card debt. I have the bank records, Mom. $38,000 to his card. $22,000 for a car. You personally withdrew $15,000 in cash over 3 visits. Do you want me to read you the dates? You're going to tear this family apart?" "The family was torn apart the night you put 3 cardboard boxes outside my bedroom door." She hung up. I sat alone in my studio that night with the comparison sheet Rita had printed. My real signature on the left, the forgery on the right. And I asked myself whether I was being too hard. Whether there was a version of this where everyone came out whole. Whether the right thing and the kind thing were the same thing. Then I looked at the forgery again. My mother's handwriting on the witness line. Green ink. The same pen she used to write grocery lists and birthday cards, and the note she'd tucked into my lunchbox in 4th grade. "Have a great day, sweetie." No, I wasn't too hard. I was finally clear. Have you ever had someone you love use your own loyalty as a weapon against you? I'd like to hear your story. Share it in the comments. You might help someone else realize they're not alone. Marcus showed up at my apartment unannounced on a Thursday evening. No call. No text. Just 3 hard knocks on a door he had no business knowing the address of, though I suspect my mother gave it to him. I checked the video feed from the Ring doorbell camera Rita had advised me to install the week prior. Marcus was standing on the walkway, jaw tight, fists opening and closing at his sides. I opened the door. "What the hell are you doing, Sabrina? Dad says you're threatening to kick us out?" "I'm not threatening anything. I'm exercising my legal rights as the property owner." "Property owner?" He laughed, a short, ugly sound. "You think a piece of paper makes you better than family? That piece of paper is a deed of trust. And another piece of paper, the one you forged with Dad, is a federal crime." The laugh died. His expression shifted, not to remorse but to calculation. I'd watched Marcus sell cars for years. I knew exactly when the pitch changed. "Look." His voice softened. "We can work this out. Tiffany's due in 8 weeks. You can't do this to her." "I'm not doing anything to Tiffany. I'm undoing what was done to me. If you go through with this, you'll never see your niece or nephew." The words landed, but they didn't stick the way he'd intended. He was using a child, an unborn child, as a bargaining chip. The same way Gerald used family as a justification for theft. "That's your choice, Marcus, not mine." He left. Slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frame. The Ring camera captured everything. His face, his voice, his threat, the timestamp, 7:42 p.m. Rita would have the footage by morning. Some people build walls with bricks. I was building mine with evidence. Gerald Brennan might not have been good with money, but he was masterful with a telephone. Within 48 hours of Marcus's visit, my father had called every branch of the family tree. Uncle Ray in Chicopee, Aunt Patrice in Holyoke. My grandmother Helen, 82 years old, in her assisted living apartment in Northampton. Cousins I hadn't spoken to since Thanksgiving 3 years ago. He called them all, and he told them all the same story. Sabrina abandoned her family. Sabrina is threatening to put her pregnant sister-in-law on the street. Sabrina has changed. The messages started arriving like a coordinated strike. Uncle Ray. "Think about what you're doing, kiddo." A cousin I barely knew. "Family first, Sabrina. Always." Aunt Patrice called directly, voice cold. "Your grandmother is crying. I hope you're happy." I tried explaining to Patrice about the forged mortgage, the $95,000, the bank records, the signature that wasn't mine. "I don't believe that," she said. "Gerald would never." That sentence, "Gerald would never," was the foundation of my father's entire strategy. He'd spent 58 years building a reputation as the dependable patriarch, the man who showed up at barbecues with a case of beer and a firm handshake, the man who called his mother every Sunday. He'd invested decades in that image, and now he was cashing it in to bury me. And it was working. In the court of family opinion, I was guilty without trial. I called Rita, told her everything. She listened, then said something that landed like an anchor. Don't fight the narrative, let the documents speak. And they will. At the right time. When? She glanced at the calendar on her desk. The open house. When all of them are there. 45 people. Perfect audience. I swallowed. That's in 5 days. Then we have 5 days to get ready. On day 14, the letter arrived at Rita's office on Greenfield Credit Union letterhead. She called me at work. You're going to want to come in. I drove to her office during my lunch break. She'd already set the letter on her desk, turned so I could read it. The key paragraph was the third one, and I'll remember the language for the rest of my life. Following an internal compliance review, the signature on the deed of trust addendum dated, redacted, does not match the authenticated signature on file for the property owner, Sabrina E. Brennan. The associated loan has been suspended pending further investigation. Suspended. Not resolved. Not yet. But suspended. The lien would not be reported to the credit bureaus. My 761 score was safe. For now. Rita continued. The loan officer who'd processed the application, Derek Gaines, had been placed on administrative leave effective immediately. The bank's compliance team had flagged multiple procedural violations. Most critically, the absence of in-person identity verification. Gaines had later admitted in an internal interview that Gerald Brennan was a regular customer who'd bought him beers a couple of times and had told him the property owner was out of town, but fully aware of the transaction. Beers. My father had traded beers for my financial identity. The lien will be removed from your property record within 30 days, Rita said. But more importantly, the bank now has an institutional interest in cooperating with us. They processed a fraudulent loan on an employee's negligence. They don't want a lawsuit. For the first time in 2 weeks, I felt something loosen behind my sternum. A pressure I hadn't realized was there because it had been there for so long. But there was still the house. Still 4 people living in my property who believed they'd won. The process server, I said. Day 17, we're still on? Rita nodded. We're still on. The process server's name was Carl. I never got his last name. He was in his 40s, built like someone who'd played football in college and never entirely stopped, and he had the blank, professional calm of a man who hands people bad news for a living. Day 15. 2 p.m. A clear Wednesday afternoon. Carl walked up the front path of 147 Maplewood Drive, past Tiffany's new welcome mat, and knocked 3 times. Gerald opened the door. Carl handed him the notice to quit, a formal 30-day eviction notice issued by the property owner, me, pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 186, Section 12. The document named all 4 occupants, Gerald Brennan, Donna Brennan, Marcus Brennan, and Tiffany Brennan. It stated, in plain legal English, that they had 30 days to vacate the property or face formal eviction proceedings through Springfield Housing Court. According to the process server's affidavit, which I received that evening, Gerald read the first page, looked up, read it again, and said nothing. The notation. Recipient appeared visibly shaken. Document served successfully at 2:07 p.m. Gerald called me 11 minutes later. For the first time in my life, his voice was not commanding. It was cracked. You're evicting us? Your own parents? You forged my name on a $95,000 loan, Dad. The bank confirmed it. You have 30 days. I did it for the family. You did it for Marcus's credit card debt. I have the transaction records. Every dollar, every deposit, every cash withdrawal Mom made. You ungrateful. He didn't finish the sentence. He hung up. Marcus called 4 minutes after that, already shouting, You're insane. Tiffany is due in 6 weeks. Where are we supposed to go? That's not my problem to solve anymore, Marcus. 2 days remained until Gerald's open house. 45 invitations sent, catering ordered, rental chairs arranged in the backyard. He didn't cancel. He told Donna, We'll show them we're still a family. Sabrina is the one who left. He still believed he controlled the narrative. Sunday, 1 p.m. The maple tree in the front yard of 147 Maplewood Drive had gone full orange, and beneath it, Gerald Brennan had arranged folding tables, a catered spread from a local deli, helium balloons in pink and white, and 45 chairs in neat rows like a congregation awaiting a sermon. The event was billed as Welcome Baby Brennan, a celebration of Marcus and Tiffany's incoming child, the first grandchild of the Brennan line. Gerald had sent text reminders the day before. Donna had baked a lemon cake. Tiffany wore a new lavender maternity dress and sat in a cushioned chair at the head of the main table like a guest of honor at a banquet. The crowd filled in over the first hour. Uncle Ray, khaki shorts and a polo, standing near the grill. Aunt Patrice, holding a wrapped gift, lips tight. Grandmother Helen, 82, seated in a padded lawn chair someone had brought specifically for her. Neighbors from Maplewood Drive, including Louise Beckett, who stood at the edge of the yard with a glass of lemonade and a face that said she was there to watch, not to celebrate. Co-workers from Riverside Motors, friends of Tiffany from the dental office, cousins, second cousins, a few people I couldn't place. Gerald stood at the center of it all. Dress shirt tucked in, sleeves rolled once at the cuff. He raised a plastic cup of lemonade and offered a toast. The Brennan family is growing. This house, this home, has always been about family. 45 people clapped. Tiffany beamed. Marcus put his arm around her. Donna smiled from behind the cake table, arranging plates. Nobody mentioned me. Gerald had told anyone who asked that I couldn't make it, that I'd been going through some things. Louise Beckett took a slow sip of her lemonade and said nothing. It was 1:15. I was 8 minutes away, sitting in my car with a manila folder on the passenger seat and a heartbeat I could feel in my throat. I parked on the street, 2 houses down, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. Gray blazer, black slacks, white blouse. The same outfit I wore to project review meetings at work. Hair pulled back in a low knot. Minimal makeup. I looked like someone who'd come to deliver a report, because that's exactly what I was doing. The manila folder sat on my lap. Inside, a certified copy of the deed of trust. The signature comparison, mine on the left, the forgery on the right. The official letter from Greenfield Credit Union confirming the loan suspension, and photocopies of the transaction records showing where every dollar of that $95,000 had gone. Rita had organized the pages in order. Each one was tabbed. I walked up the sidewalk at 2:15. The party had been going for over an hour. People were eating, laughing, milling around the yard. A few kids chased each other near the fence. The balloons bobbed in a light breeze. Gerald saw me first. He was standing near the porch steps, mid-conversation with a cousin, and his expression went through 3 stages in about 2 seconds. Surprise, irritation, and something closer to fear than I'd ever seen on his face. He walked toward me fast. "What are you doing here?" "I'm at my house, Dad. The one with my name on the deed." "Don't make a scene. I'm not the one who forged someone's signature on a mortgage application." His hand closed around my arm, just above the elbow. Not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to steer. "Lower your voice." A voice came from behind us, clear and firm. "Gerald, take your hand off that girl." Louise Beckett. Standing 6 feet away, lemonade still in hand, expression as steady as poured concrete. Gerald let go. A few heads turned, then a few more. Tiffany appeared in the doorway, baby shower gift bag still in her hand. She saw me and her face drained of color. Why is she here? 45 people were watching now. I stood on the porch, 3 steps up from the yard in full view of every guest, and I did not raise my voice. I didn't need to. Silence carries farther than shouting when the audience is already listening. Most of you were told I moved out because I wanted my own space. That's not what happened. I opened the manila folder. This house is in my name. Only my name. I bought it 4 years ago with an FHA loan. I've paid every mortgage payment, $2,340 a month. 48 months, $112,320 total. My parents contributed $0. Gerald took a step forward. Sabrina, stop this. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that my father, with my mother as a witness, forged my signature on a $95,000 mortgage application at Greenfield Credit Union. I held up the signature comparison. This is my real signature. I pointed to the left column. And this is the one on the mortgage. I pointed to the right. They're not the same. The bank confirmed it in writing. I held up the letter from Greenfield. The loan has been suspended. The bank is investigating. I held up the transaction summary. $38,000 went to Marcus's credit card debt, $22,000 to a car dealership for his down payment. $15,000 was withdrawn in cash by my mother. $20,000 is sitting in my father's savings account right now. My parents stole $95,000 from me by forging my name. The yard went silent. Not the polite silence of a pause between toasts, the airless silence of 45 people realizing they're standing inside someone else's lie. Aunt Patrice set her cup down on the table. Uncle Ray looked at Gerald with an expression I'd never seen him wear. Then Louise Beckett spoke, loud enough for every corner of that yard. I've lived next door for 11 years. I watched this girl mow that lawn, paint those walls, shovel that driveway. Alone. Every single time. And they had the nerve to put her in the basement. I set the folder on the porch railing. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because 45 people deserve to know the truth before they congratulate this family on growing. Tiffany rose from the cushioned chair slowly, one hand on the armrest, the other on her belly. Her face was the color of the paper plates stacked on the catering table. She looked at Marcus the way you'd look at a stranger wearing your husband's clothes. Tell me this isn't real. Marcus didn't move. His eyes were fixed on a spot on the ground somewhere between his shoes and the edge of the lawn. His mouth opened, then closed. Marcus. Tiffany's voice went up an octave. Tell me the $38,000 wasn't true. Tell me you didn't use stolen money to pay off your debt. It's complicated, Tiff. It's not true. Tell me it's not true. Her voice broke across the yard like glass on tile. A child near the fence stopped running. Uncle Ray set his plate down. Grandmother Helen, seated in her padded lawn chair, gripped both armrests and stared at her son with the kind of stillness that precedes a verdict. Gerald tried. He stepped forward, arms out, the patriarch reassembling his stage. Everyone, this is a family matter. Uncle Ray cut him off. A family matter? You forged your daughter's name, Gerald. That's not a family matter. That's a crime. Aunt Patrice, the same woman who'd told me my grandmother was crying because of me, picked up the wrapped baby gift she'd brought, set it back in her bag, and stepped away from the table without a word. Then Helen spoke. Her voice was thin from age but harder than anything I'd heard that afternoon. Gerald, I didn't raise you to be a thief. Mom, sit down and be quiet. Gerald sat, on a folding chair, in the middle of his own party, in front of 45 people. He sat down and said nothing. Tiffany walked inside. The screen door slammed behind her. One by one, guests began collecting their things. Nobody took leftover cake. Nobody said congratulations. The open house was over. The house was mine. An hour later, the yard looked like the aftermath of something canceled mid-sentence. Folding tables still up, paper plates caught in the grass, pink and white balloons tethered to the mailbox, bobbing in a wind that no longer had a party beneath it. I sat in my car at the curb, engine off, hands on my knees. I'd expected to feel something sharp, triumph, relief, the clean snap of justice delivered. Instead, I felt hollow, like I'd just pulled a tooth that had been rotting for years. Necessary, correct, and nothing about it felt good. Through the front window, I could see Gerald sitting in the living room, just sitting. Donna was in the kitchen. I could see her shadow moving behind the curtain, wiping the counter, the way she always did when she didn't know what else to do. Upstairs, behind the closed door of the nursery that used to be my bedroom, Tiffany had locked Marcus out. I could hear it even from the curb. Her voice, muffled, but unmistakable. You told me you got a bonus? A bonus, Marcus. You lied to my face for 3 months. I was going to tell you. When? After the baby was born? After we moved into a house that isn't even ours? A car pulled up behind mine. Uncle Ray. He got out, walked to my window, and stood there for a moment before he spoke. I owe you an apology. I believed your father. I shouldn't have. Thank you, Uncle Ray. That means a lot. He nodded once, got back in his car, and drove away. Aunt Patrice left without stopping. But 48 hours later, she'd send a text, 2 paragraphs long, an apology she clearly rewrote several times. I started my car and pulled away from Maplewood Drive. In the rearview mirror, the balloon still floated above the mailbox, pink and white against a gray sky, celebrating something that no longer existed. Tiffany called that night at 9:30. Her voice was different from what I expected. Not angry, not crying, just flat. The voice of someone who has run out of feelings and is now running on information. I need to know everything, every dollar, every lie. I hesitated. This was the same woman who'd told me to leave my own house, who'd posted my bedroom on Instagram as a trophy, who'd called me selfish for not paying the electric bill on a property she was occupying for free. But she was also 7 months pregnant and had just discovered that her husband had funded their life with stolen money. Whatever she was before, right now she was someone who deserved the truth. I sent her the transaction records. All of them. 15 minutes of silence. Then her name appeared on my phone again. The $22,000 for the car. He told me that was a dealer discount. He said he earned it. I'm sorry, Tiffany, I really am. Don't be sorry. I'm the one who told you to leave your own house. A pause long enough to drive through. I didn't know it was your house. Gerald told me it was a family property, passed down from your grandparents. That's what he said. It was never a family property. I bought it with my own money when I was 25. Another silence, then quieter. I owe you an apology. A real one. Not now. I can't right now. But I owe you one. Before she hung up, she told me something I hadn't known. Marcus also owed her $7,000. Money she'd lent him before the wedding. Money he'd sworn he'd pay back after the baby came. She was beginning to see the pattern I'd spent 4 years learning. Her last words. I'm calling my mom tomorrow. I'm not raising this baby in a house built on lies. She kept her word. The week after the open house, the Brennan family came apart like a building with the load-bearing wall removed. And I would know. I'm an engineer. I know exactly what happens when you take away the thing that held everything up. Tiffany moved to her mother's house in Worcester, an hour and a half east. Marcus called her 14 times the first day. She answered none of them. By the third day, her Facebook status changed from married to blank, not single, not, it's complicated, just blank, which somehow felt louder than either. Marcus lost his footing. Without Tiffany, without the baby on the way narrative, he was just a 33-year-old man sleeping on the sofa in his sister's house, except it wasn't his sister's house. It was just his sister's. Gerald, for the first time in Marcus's memory, turned on him. If you hadn't been in so much debt, none of this would have happened. Golden child, meet the cold side of the altar. Gerald himself was unraveling in slower, quieter ways. He canceled his weekly poker game for the first time in 12 years, told his buddies, family stuff. But 2 of the men in that group had been at the open house. They already knew. The phone calls Gerald used to receive. From cousins checking in, from friends wanting to grab lunch. Slowed to a trickle. Uncle Ray didn't call at all. Helen, his own mother, didn't return his calls for 3 days straight. Donna called me once a day, every day. Same script, same cadence. Please come home. We can fix this. And every day I gave the same answer. There's nothing to fix, Mom. There's only what happens next. On Friday, a letter arrived at 147 Maplewood Drive from Greenfield Credit Union, a formal request for Gerald and Donna to appear in person at the branch to discuss the matter. The bank had its own problems now, and Gerald was running out of people willing to believe his version of the story. The internet is not kind to secrets. It's even less kind when the secret involves baby showers and stolen mortgages. Tiffany deleted the Instagram post. Family always makes room for the next generation, the one with 212 likes and a pink heart emoji. She deleted it, But screenshots live forever, and within a day, a friend of hers from the dental office posted a cryptic status on Facebook. Imagine finding out the house you thought was a gift was actually stolen property. Some families. Red flag emoji. 89 comments. 340 reactions. Tiffany wasn't named. She didn't need to be. The people who knew, knew. On Maplewood Drive, the Whisper network operated at the speed of a cul-de-sac. Louise Beckett didn't gossip. It wasn't in her nature. But when neighbors asked, she gave them one sentence. I watched that girl build this home with her own 2 hands. You should ask Gerald what he built. It was the kind of line that didn't need a follow-up. People filled in the rest themselves. At Riverside Motors, Marcus's co-workers had been at the open house. 2 of them. They'd seen the documents, heard Tiffany scream, watched Gerald get told to sit down by his own mother. One of them asked Marcus on Monday morning, "Hey, wasn't that your sister's house?" Marcus didn't answer. He requested 3 days of personal leave. His manager approved it without questions. Some silences are louder than explanations. Aunt Patrice sent me a text on the second Tuesday. It was longer than I expected and more honest than I deserved from someone who'd told me my grandmother was crying because of me. Sabrina, I am sorry. I should have listened to you before I judged you. I always wondered how Marcus afforded that new car. Now I know. I hope you can forgive me in time. I didn't reply right away, but I saved the message. Some apologies need to sit before you know what they weigh. Day 30. The eviction notice expired on a Tuesday morning. No extensions, no negotiations, no last-minute phone calls that changed anything. Rita sent a final formal letter to the house. If all occupants had not vacated by end of day, we would file for a court-ordered eviction through Springfield Housing Court. The letter was addressed to Gerald. It arrived by certified mail. He signed for it. That signature, at least, was his own. Gerald called me that afternoon. His voice was different. Not angry, not commanding, not even the cracked version from weeks ago. It was flat, depleted. The voice of a man who has run out of people to blame and hasn't yet learned how to look in a mirror. Where are we supposed to go, Sabrina? I've already looked into this for you. There are 2 apartments available on Elm Street. $1,200 and $1,400 a month. Your disability check covers rent. Mom can apply for part-time work. That's your starting point. Silence. I'm not throwing you out with nothing, Dad. I'm telling you that you can't live in a house you stole from me. There's a difference. I didn't steal. Yes. You did. More silence. Then, okay. That was it. 1 word. The smallest, heaviest word he'd ever spoken to me. Donna started packing the next morning. Gerald sat in his recliner and watched. Marcus, who'd already moved in with a friend 2 weeks earlier, came by to collect the last of his things. He carried 2 boxes to his car without making eye contact with anyone. Day 33. Gerald and Donna moved into the $1,200 apartment on Elm Street. 1 bedroom, street level, a fraction of the space they'd occupied for free in my house. Gerald didn't say a word as he turned the key in the lock for the last time. Donna lingered at the front door, looked back at the house, then looked at me standing by my car. She nodded, small, slow, and walked to the passenger side of Gerald's truck. I handed my father 2 apartment listings because I couldn't hand him nothing. Even after everything, I couldn't be what he was to me. The legal aftermath was quieter than the personal one, but no less final. Greenfield Credit Union completed its internal investigation 6 weeks after the open house. The result? The $95,000 loan was voided in its entirety. The lien on 147 Maplewood Drive was removed from all property records. The fraudulent entry on my credit file was expunged through formal disputes with Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. My score, which had never actually dropped, thanks to Rita's preemptive action, climbed from 761 to 774 once the lien removal was reflected. Derek Gaines, the loan officer who'd processed the application on Gerald's word and a few beers, was terminated. The bank sent me a formal apology letter and offered a $5,000 goodwill compensation. I declined the money. Instead, I asked for a written commitment that Greenfield would implement mandatory in-person identity verification for all future mortgage applications. They agreed. Rita had the commitment notarized. The harder question came next: criminal charges. Rita laid it out plainly. What Gerald and Donna had done, forging a signature on a financial instrument, constituted forgery under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 267, Section 1. What Marcus had done, knowingly receiving proceeds, was fraud. I had standing to file a criminal complaint. I chose not to. Not because they didn't deserve it. Because I didn't want to spend 2 years in courtrooms revisiting the worst thing my family had ever done to me. I'd already won. I had my house, my credit, my name back. I didn't need a conviction to know I was right. But Rita sent Gerald one final letter. Ms. Brennan has chosen not to pursue criminal charges at this time. This decision is a courtesy, not an entitlement. Any future unauthorized use of Ms. Brennan's identity or property will be referred directly to law enforcement. Donna told me later. Gerald read that letter twice, folded it, and put it in a drawer. He never mentioned it again. Some warnings don't need to be loud. They just need to be permanent. 2 months after the open house, I sat at my kitchen table in the studio apartment, the one I'd rented as a temporary escape, and wrote an email. Not to Rita, not to the bank, to my family. All 3 of them: Gerald, Donna, Marcus. It took me 4 hours to get it right. Not because the language was complicated, but because I wanted every word to be a wall with a door in it. Firm enough to protect me, open enough to prove I wasn't them. The email had 3 sections. The first was financial. I will not provide financial support for rent, utilities, or personal expenses. If you need assistance, I can refer you to community resources in Springfield. The second was about contact. I am open to communication, but only under specific conditions. No guilt language, no demands, and no discussion of the house or the mortgage. If these boundaries are crossed, I will pause contact for 90 days. The third was about the future. If and when trust is rebuilt, through consistent, demonstrated change over time, not through words. I'm open to having a relationship, but it will be on different terms than before. I read it 6 times. Then I pressed send. Gerald never responded. Not a word. Not then. Not since. Donna replied 2 days later. I understand. I'm sorry, Sabrina. I truly am. Marcus responded 2 weeks after that. 4 words. I get it. Which was either growth or fatigue. I couldn't tell, and I decided it didn't matter. I'd spent 4 years asking myself if I was being too hard, too cold, too much. But writing that email, laying it out in plain language, setting terms I could point to, was the first time I felt like I was being exactly enough. Have you ever had to draw a line with someone you love? Not with anger, but with a document? How did it feel? Tell me in the comments. You might find you're not the only one holding that pen. 3 months after the open house, Tiffany gave birth to a girl. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Lily Mae Brennan, born at a hospital in Worcester, near Tiffany's mother's house, in a delivery room that Marcus was not invited into. Tiffany sent me a photo the next morning. A tiny face wrapped in a white blanket, eyes closed, one miniature fist curled against her cheek. Beneath the photo, a message longer than any Tiffany had ever sent me. Sabrina, I said terrible things to you in a house that was never mine to claim. I was wrong. I was told things that weren't true, and I chose to believe them because it was easier. That's on me. You don't owe me anything. But if you ever want to meet Lily, she has your eyes? Actually, the door is open. No pressure. No timeline. I looked at that photo for a long time. Then I cried. For the first time since I'd left Maplewood Drive, I cried. Not from sadness, not from anger, but from the particular relief of something unclenching inside your chest that you forgot was clenched. I replied, "Thank you, Tiffany. That means more than you know. I'd like to meet Lily when the time is right." Tiffany had filed for separation at Worcester County Probate Court. She wasn't going back to Marcus. She told me later, in a conversation I didn't expect to have, that the $7,000 he still owed her was the smallest of his debts. Marcus called me once after Lily was born. He asked if he could bring the baby to see me sometime. I said yes, but at a coffee shop in town, not at my house. Public space. Neutral ground. A boundary I didn't need to explain and he didn't try to push. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a faucet. And I get to control the flow. 6 months after the open house, I moved back into 147 Maplewood Drive. My house. My name on the deed. My hand on the doorknob. My key in the lock. I repainted every room. New colors. Not to erase anything, but because I'd earned the right to choose. Soft gray in the bedroom, warm white in the kitchen. The basement got a proper floor, vapor barrier, and recessed lighting. I never wanted to look at bare concrete again. Louise Beckett came over the first afternoon with a potted lavender plant, set it on the porch railing, squeezed my hand, and said, "Welcome home, honey. For real this time." At work, the promotion I'd been tracking came through. Senior project engineer. Salary. $104,000 a year. I signed the offer letter at the same desk where I'd first seen the credit monitoring alert that started all of this. I began writing. Not reports, words. A blog first. Personal essays about family systems. About the cost of being the reliable one. About what happens when you stop subsidizing people who've confused your labor for your love. The first post. The basement test. How I knew it was time to leave. Was shared 4,200 times in its first month. A small publisher in Boston, Harborline Press, reached out. They wanted a book. I signed the contract for The Deed is in My Name, Reclaiming Your Life from Family That Takes Too Much. Publication timeline, 8 months. Gerald and Donna live on Elm Street. He calls once a month. The calls are short, awkward, and devoid of demands. That, in itself, is progress. Marcus works at a dealership in Chicopee and sees Lily every 2 weeks. He's quieter now. Whether that's growth or exhaustion, I'm not sure. I've stopped needing to know. I met Lily at a coffee shop on a Tuesday afternoon. She was 3 months old, asleep in her carrier. Marcus handed her to me, and I held her, warm, impossibly small, and thought, I didn't lose a family. I lost a version of family that was never real. And I built something better in its place. The house is quiet now, but it's a different kind of quiet. Not the silence of being ignored, but the peace of being in control. That's my story. I shared it not because I'm angry. I'm not. Not anymore. But because I know someone out there is lying in their own basement right now, paying for a house they're not allowed to live in, wondering if they're the problem. You're not the problem. You were never the problem, and the moment you decide to stop funding the lie, that's the moment your life actually starts. If this story reached you, hit like. Subscribe if you want to hear more. And if you know someone who needs to hear this tonight, share it. Sometimes the thing that saves us is knowing someone else walked out first. There's another part of this story I haven't told yet, about the conversation between Gerald and his mother Helen, the one that happened a week after the open house, the one Donna said changed something in him permanently. That story is in the video linked in the description. I'll see you there.